Just
I can
fucking
see
say
where
it
others
sucks.
would, and
Just
that
say it fucking sucks. Just say I hated it and it sucked. It was uncomfortable. It was weird. I hated the writing. The characters are fucking dumb. I don't like it. Just say that because that would be honest. And it's also true. Cash App you with the request B because I just got paid and a raise recently. Hell yeah. It's a class reflections video on Bakemonogatari. Oh no. Oh no. All right. We'll line that up. Make sure that's ready.
Bakemonogatari is
Oh boy. Jesus Christ. Why did he open like that? Bakemonogatari. Whoa, what the fuck? It definitely got my attention. I guess that was the idea, but holy Christ, holy Jesus, holy Moses. Another biblical name that took seconds off of my life. All right. Y'all, while we're on the subject of like really old YouTubers that I have met in person, I've been out drinking with Glass Reflections as part of a group. He seemed very uptight and awkward. That is not the vibe that you would get off the way he's about to say Bakemonogatari at the start of this video.
Bakemonogatari.
I understand now why people get so mad at me for how I pronounce this show, because I also say Bakemonogatari. It's like Bakemonogatari, you know, like it's like meant to be said very differently from how English speakers say it. Bakemonogatari, like whoa.
Well, it's a thing. It's not quite an action series, though it has that. It's not quite a solely supernatural series in the traditional sense, though it features that heavily. And it's also not quite a romantic comedy, though that depends on your definition of romance. So really...
Gary, how dare you compare that to anime as a Japanese colloquialism? That wasn't nearly so obnoxious. That was like, anime is a Japanese colloquialism. Anime is a Japanese colloquialism. It was like soothing and soft.
It's a thing. Adapted from the light novel of the same name by writer whose name I'm not going to attempt to butcher
Nishio Ishin.
pronunciation of. And that was adapted back in 2009 by Studio Shaft, and its resident...
I wish he had. I wish he had just gone for it. I wish he had said, I'm about to butcher the pronunciation of, and then just tried his best. That would have been great.
Artiste, Chief Director Akiyuki Shimbo. Bakemonogatari is...
Did he say autist? Hold on.
Artiste.
I think he's trying to say artiste, but it sounds like he's saying autist.
Chief Director Akiyuki Shimbo. Bakemonogatari is a series and now an entire anime franchise that people have sworn by as one of their favorite anime since...
I appreciate this is all of Utena, right? I think like 3 different like each saga of Utena or something. None of this is anything shitty to have on your shelf. 80 Police is shit.
Its inception due to its interesting characters, unique visual style, and its plot. But largely, it's a series that I've previously avoided.
But it sounds like he's saying autist.
Chief Director Akiyuki Shimbo. Bakemonogatari is a series and now an entire anime franchise that people have sworn by as one of their favorite anime since even worse availability in the West. And to be honest, with...
Oh man, when people start talking about availability in the West, I'm just like, it really feels like a generational divide to me. I understand that you're coming from the position of back when we used to have to collect DVDs, and so it like is like a point of pride. But like, I just imagine a 13-year-old hearing that and being like, I literally don't even comprehend what the fuck you're talking about. Like, what do you mean hard to find in the West? I literally can tab over and find it in 3 seconds. Like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Few exceptions, I found that any work with Akiyuki Shimbo attached to it gets more praise for being deep and meaningful than it actually deserves. But today, it's high time that I finally take a look at the series that's now over a decade old and see not only how it holds up compared to many of the shows that have followed in its wake, but also try to imagine how the me of...
This is the kind of thing that's going to get Shames in trouble for being like in the chat on my stream.
10 years ago.
I'm sorry.
I'm
sorry, Caribou-kun. I'm sorry.
Ladies and gentlemen and others, my name is Arcada, and welcome to Glass Reflection, where today we're looking at Bakemonogatari. Let's jam. Bakemonogatari is a series I wouldn't necessarily describe as good. It's not a series I would actively recommend to people, nor is it one that I personally found engrossing as something.
I don't think he's going to spoil anything, but I will also say there are certain things that would suck to have spoiled about this, but not in the first show. Like, if he's only talking about the first season of Bakemonogatari, there's nothing really. It's pretty much a slice of life anime. There are like twists at the end of each arc, but they're not really meaningful to spoil unless you already know what the arc's about. Like, they're all kind of like puzzles.
To watch. But it is a series that is interesting. It has many elements to it that it wants to explore, and I can't say that it doesn't find unique ways to showcase those elements. But the show, to me,
I should say they're all like word puzzles, but they're all Japanese word puzzles that are fucking not solvable if you don't know Japanese. So you're just gonna watch it unfold and go, "Oh, okay, that's what was happening."
is
Like,
a constant battle between two things. Wanting to show how intelligent it actually is, while also showcasing how much of a pervert the main character can be. The series is a combination of character arcs involving supernatural elements, loosely strung together by connection to our protagonist, Araragi. Araragi is a half-human former vampire oddity who, while still having his humanity, also retains several...
yeah, season 2 is definitely where there's stuff that like I wouldn't want you to know going into it because it's legitimately shocking. Like season 2 is like, oh, this is a story now, like. And when I say season 2, I'm not talking about Monogatari either. I'm talking about Monogatari series, the second season, or whatever the fuck they called it. The release order of this is absolutely fucked. It doesn't make any sense.
Several vampiric abilities from his backstory, such as regeneration. And instead of realizing how dangerous and deadly interactions with the supernatural world...
It's funny too because like there's so many anime that people will ask like what order should I watch it in? And like 9 times out of 10 my answer is release order. If you want to watch Mobile Suit Gundam, watch the anime that is called Mobile Suit Gundam and then watch the next one that came after that. But with Monogatari, starting with Monogatari does make sense. The story literally will make more sense if you start there. But it came out like after it came out like 50 episodes into the fucking show. And it's not that it doesn't make sense to watch Monogatari like in release order. It's just that it feels, if you're talking about the books went Bakemono then Kizumono. So like the Kizumono, backstory would have been right after season 1 and they started working on it right after season 1. They just took 6 years to finish it. They had also gone and made more of the show in the meantime under a different director. There's also this kind of stylistic divide where Monogatari feels more like Bakemonogatari, but then the rest of it kind of feels different because it's the main director of the original show had been tied up in this movie the whole time. There's over 100 episodes of this fucking shit. And a lot of the times the later twists kind of undo the earlier twists. So like stuff that happens early in the story almost doesn't matter. But anyway.
Can be, and just walking away from it, he decides that despite not being an expert in supernatural dealings, he should take it upon himself to become chief exorcist of the area. Thus, he involves himself in many supernatural phenomena likely to get him killed, as long as it's a service to a woman in need. I've known for a long time that Bakemonogatari...
Yeah, I agree with Cole that like Kizu and Bake are both equally sensical starting points. It's just a question of if you don't start with Monogatari, where do you slot it in? The only bad place to watch it would probably be last because then you'll be like, oh, that's what Araragi and Hanekawa's deal is.
Monogatari has been a staple, as it were, for the slew of anime about a protagonist whose sole job throughout...
Okay, part of the reason I think it doesn't make sense to watch it in release order is I don't think Nekomonogatari is as good unless you've seen Monogatari. Like, I didn't like Nekomonogatari Black when I watched it the first time. Nekomonogatari White at the start of second season kind of redeemed it for me, but I think I would have had a way easier time with Nekomonogatari Black if I had known everything about Hanekawa that you know from Kizu, which again in the novels would have been the case. Bakemonogatari barely tells you anything about Hanekawa, and then Monogatari heavily involves her, and then Nekomonogatari is entirely about her. So if you don't have that emotional connection to her from Kizumono, Nekomono feels like just kind of not the best introduction to who she is, to like give a fuck about the development she's having then.
Throughout the series is to solve the problems of various female characters. While it is not the originator of this format by any stretch, because visual novel adaptations have been a thing.
While Kizumono makes sense to watch before Bakemono, I do think watching Bakemono first is the most enjoyable experience because, again, that's how it was created. And I think Nishio Scene, rather, when he was creating Bakemonogatari, he wanted it to feel like there was all this baggage that the characters had coming into the story. And then he was going to go explore that baggage in the next book. He wanted you to meet them as people who had already already developed past the state that they are at the start of Kizu, and there's kind of like a dramatic irony of knowing who they're going to become as compared to who they are at the start.
Long before Monogatari came along. I don't think it's actually true to say.
Yes, Kizu was made into 3 movies. It's just one book, and the 3 movies are all like 50 minutes long or so. But they're gorgeous. They're just unbelievably gorgeous, and that's why they took so fucking long to make.
That Araragi as a protagonist is actually there to solve problems, even if that's what he sometimes ends up doing. The first arc of the series even takes great pains to specify this, with a famous line of the series stating that the only one who can solve the problems of these characters.
Yeah, Dean. I mean, this is why I don't talk about Monogatari anymore, is that like I'm really careful about who I'm trying to court with my videos. Like, who do I want to talk to? You know, who do I want to be arguing with? When it comes to Monogatari fans, my opinion on Monogatari is like, isn't it a shame that it's so, you know, like how it is? Wouldn't it be nice if all this genius was applied to something else? And that's obviously not going to be the point for the Monogatari fans. I'm sure Nishio Isin himself has probably aged past this. The man's like in his 40s now. He's written plenty of shit since then. We could read newer Nishio Isin books. Maybe figure out if he's changed or evolved or adapted at all.
Are the characters themselves. It's this inner reflection that the characters have to face, which makes the show worth watching as they wrestle with their internal.
The lolly stuff in Monogatari is on another level. It is deliberately like transgressively in your face.
Problems and the more supernatural external results of that. But even then, I have to constantly question if anything actually gets solved. More often than not, in this first season, the root cause of any problem is not the issue that gets resolved. Instead, they only patch up the more obvious symptoms of the greater problem. Sanjo Gahara's home life.
Landon, this is exactly the problem we're talking about. No. Stop. Stop it.
That caused her supernatural weight problems isn't really dealt with, only the weight issue itself. One could make the clear argument that Araragi was one of the major problems with Kanbaru to begin with, and Hanekawa's problems are less solved and rather just further repressed by Shinobu until, presumably, a later arc can finally deal with it. For the show's talk of having the heroines being the only ones that can solve their problems, there's plenty of unsolving to be seen. And when things actually do get fixed, it is Araragi that resolves the situation. Well, sort of. Much of this initial season had me asking what his purpose actually is. He mostly just seems to be a ferryman of sorts, to guide our characters to Oshino, who ends up providing the solution more often than not that Araragi just acts upon, usually unsuccessfully. For a series that has the word story in the title, though, I actually found that the overall story is actually one of the least interesting things about it. By contrast, it's the individual stories that are much more potent entertainment. It reminds me a lot of why I like shows like Mushishi, with its taking of Japanese folklore and turning that into supernatural phenomena that the Mushi master Ginko attempts to solve or mitigate with his knowledge. Every arc of Bakemonogatari.
I think that's a fair comparison, and one that I would not have thought of. I tend to compare this show to like other Faust light novel type stuff. I'm sure probably other people have compared it to Mushishi, but I don't think that ever crossed my mind.
Monogatari brings in a new supernatural. It's not necessarily an original problem, as like Mushishi, there are plenty of references to myths and folklore. Because like, if somebody tried to tell me that Bakemonogatari was the originator of the monkey's paw, I'd look at them and laugh. But to be fair, Bake takes these tales and reimagines them into more modern settings. And that's one of the best things about the series. And then the show had to go be all sexual about it.
Oh no, not sex! Whatever am I going to do? I hate sex!
There is a particularly negative discourse to be had when discussing Bakemonogatari.
I obviously cannot show some of this content due to YouTube restrictions, but feel free to use your imagination. But you already showed enough with that shot just earlier of Natako.
And it's more sexually charged content. Some people believe that the constant panty shots, naked women, and sexual harassment of underage.
Gary, I think there's certain anime fans who feel this way. This was like the 4chan mentality back in the day, right? Like, yeah, fuck off, normie, get filtered. And then it came to be where people want to justify and argue about it. If I make an argument that I think that this show is like crass or perverse, and you say, get filtered, normie, I'm like, yes, I have indeed been filtered. You are correct. But if they're like, well, actually, the way that it presents it, if you really think about it, she's been dead for 17 years, so technically she's a 25-year-old ghost. That's not what the show's saying. All right. Like I can see what the show is saying. I understand what it's saying. I understand why it's doing what it's doing. There's certain things that I used to do that I still understand why I did them. And I look back on it and I think this just enables the wrong people. I'm not saying I don't think that this show is funny. I just think that this show didn't need to empower what it accidentally empowers by trying to be funny.
Its characters are not really important to the plot necessarily, but are rather just jokes that are not to be taken seriously. That they are just the aspects that need to be included in order to make the series cater to a larger audience when its deeper themes would have lost them otherwise. Other people are of the mind that it's all intentional, and that the risque content is itself just a reflection of the main character's repressed desires, and it is absolutely essential for the development of the characters. It's a deconstruction of fan service in anime, they might say.
Number 6, Monogatari franchise. Deconstruction of harem genre and fan service.
There are also some people who say that the show is not sexual at all. That is an opinion I've seen. And really, I think that if that is one you hold, you might need to get your eyes checked. Possibly. But this is why coming up with my own take hasn't been easy, mostly because I see both the truth and flaws to many of these arguments. So here's how I choose to look at it. You can say that Senjo Gahara's walking around naked has some secret meaning, how her comments about clothes being too heavy given her weightless nature point to something more. And you might be right about that, but I'm not one to say that.
You are definitely right about that. The entire fucking show is double entendres. It doesn't mean it's good. We have this thing when we talk about shows where like we think that deep equals good. Deep doesn't equal good. You can be deep and be dog shit. I think Ergo Proxy is really deep. I think it's boring as fuck. Lots of stuff's deep. You gotta be more than just deep.
That someone's view of the scene is wrong by not picking up on that. It's an issue that I have when writers are being vague about something. If the meaning is not explicitly clear, then really whatever meaning that the watcher takes from it is just as valid as the next. I don't believe that anyone looking at this scene who just writes it off as fan service is necessarily wrong in that assumption, nor do I disagree with any essays that people have written on this scene's hidden message about the characters. We all have different takeaways, and that leads us to all having different opinions on the series itself, which is great. If we all had the same opinion, I'd probably be out of the job. So yes, there are plenty of sexually charged representations and scenes in Bakemonogatari, and this first season doesn't even have the scene. And Monogatari fans know exactly what scene I'm talking about. However you interpret these scenes is entirely up to you.
So far, nothing he said has clung to my brain whatsoever. He has not said one interesting sentence in this video. This is like the least interesting Bakemonogatari review I've ever seen, possibly. That's astonishing in and of itself.
To you, but they are important because, honestly, how you react to them and whether or not you enjoy them is definitely going to be like the biggest indicator of your enjoyment level for the series as a whole. Whether or not you enjoy them is definitely going to be like the biggest indicator of your enjoyment. Like, I don't necessarily like them, and found that more often than not, it led me to an even worse opinion of Araragi as the series progressed. But, you know, sneaking up on an underage girl only to grope her and then question why she fights back will have that effect. But there are times when I did feel like a meaning could be taken from it. If only the show didn't flaunt its fan service so much to make me tired of it. It's the difference between opening a bag of chips and then just eating a handful versus downing the whole bag. Moderation is key. The show's lack of it at times is what ultimately made it a harder watch for me than it could have been. And I'm sure there are plenty of people down in the comments.
Yeah, you little fuckers. Ruining my life. Talking about me every day. Just because I put myself in front of you every day. You sons of bitches.
Now mentioning how I watched the show wrong or how I just don't understand, but can't win them all. I said at the start of the video that Bakemonogatari is a series that is very hard to recommend. And that's an opinion.
Let me put it this way. If you are somebody who should see Bakemonogatari, you will. No one needs to tell you to. And in fact, if someone tells you to watch it, stay away from them. They're not well.
That shouldn't be controversial either. I'd like to hope. And I'm not just talking about the show's fan service, though that is a huge turnoff for many, but just how most of the rest of the show is presented. There are entire episodes that are not much more than two characters having a long and involved conversation about highly detailed subjects that only loosely tie into the plot events. And for many, that's not something that's
Love the bamboo in this shot.
easy to follow. It has a very Seinfeld nature to the conversations, and one
You know what? I actually think that's a pretty apt comparison. I do actually think Seinfeld is a pretty fair comparison to Nisi Seed's writing style.
could largely describe them as just circular conversations about nothing. But at least Seinfeld had a layer of humor to that nothingness.
It's not fair to say they're about nothing, though, because in this case, they are very much about something, and that is the point. It's conversations that sound like they're about nothing until you realize that actually all of them were just kind of circling something that is at the heart of it. And then when they finally address that thing, that's when the arc ends.
To make the dialogue more interesting. Like, you almost need to rewatch some scenes in Bakemonogatari multiple times just to get a grasp on where and why a conversation takes a particular turn, which only slows down the experience. Only then to have to stop the experience entirely in order to read all the text. Not only are most of the
Landon, I hope you know that your whole existence is the toothbrushing scene of my content. Never stop.
conversations very word heavy, but most scenes are constantly overlaid with smash cuts to text-filled scenes with descriptions, inner monologues,
Oh no.
and the
Wait, Mopu, you weren't here at the start. Let me just run it back real quick. We're at 10:35. You got to hear this.
Bakemonogatari is
Oh man. Oh boy.
of the conversations very word heavy, but most scenes are constantly overlaid with smash cuts to text-filled scenes with descriptions, inner monologues, and the like that are never on screen long enough to read them properly. Watching on a computer is almost essential to be able to pause quickly enough to catch the text and then read it. But that just
It really is. Now that I've heard it 3 times, I can't stop hearing it in my head like I've committed it to memory. Bakemonogatari, I can't do it. I can hear it in my mind. I can't replicate it.
slows everything down more. And I never say to skip the text though, because all of it
Oh my
is
God.
purposeful, and it might just be, you know, easier to read in Japanese for Japanese readers in order to get the gist of it as it quickly passes on. But
Yeah,
I could never
Mopu,
get that.
The weirdest part is that this came out in 2019. This is like the most generic imaginable review of Bakemonogatari on like its 10th anniversary. Is that what he was going for? It was literally a fucking decade old. It's not even relevant in 2019. Why did this happen? Was this like a Patreon request? Are we gonna find out this was a Patreon request or something? Like,
The English translated text. It might just be subliminal, and if that's the argument you're going to go for, sure, but I feel like it's there for a purpose, and I should be able to read it. This whole experience just exemplifies the kinds of things you need to be okay with in order to get the most out of this series, and also the type of mindset you need to be in before even starting the first episode. If you're not prepared enough for that, then there's a good chance that you might come away with an even less impressed outlook on the series than I did. It's probably why I took so long in actually attempting to tackle
okay,
the
here we
series.
go. Caribou-kun figured it out. He did 5 classic reviews in December based on votes for a few years. Okay, so he's doing like, because Anthony Fantano every December will do 5 classic album reviews. The problem is that Arcada's whole thing is very like designed by, not even committee is the wrong word. It's like he goes out and finds what people's opinions are and tries to, like, he is trying to be generic. It's weird. Like, that is actually part of his goal, I think. He finds out what everybody is saying and tries to represent represent all of the general viewpoints. I don't know why. I don't know like what's the appeal of that other than I guess people watch it. He's got 500,000 subs, so I don't know why I'm acting like I know better, but what is he like getting out of like reviewing Bakemonogatari, like based on his audience voting for it, other than a video? You know, I don't know. I'm not gonna act like I've never just watched anime for the sake of getting to talk about it, but this whole approach is strange to me. But again, I don't have 500,000 subscribers
as well, because I knew of all of this years ago. Watching Bakemonogatari and then moving on to...
He says it differently every time, too. That time it was Bakemonogatari. If you watch all of Grappler Baki, you are having a Bakemonogatari of your own.
The rest of the...
And also, the closed caption says Bark Monogatari.
Monogatari series is a commitment. Like I said, I would try to imagine myself 10 years ago and how he might have enjoyed this series, but I have a feeling that
this man is Road Circus security shoes, bruh. Call back to earlier stream. Yeah. Well, and he ran into this problem. I think he changed how he was doing things a little bit after this one review he did of Monthly Girls Nozaki-kun, where like he raised like negative points about the show. I think it was that like it sounded like he was really praising it and barely had any negative points, but then he gave it kind of a low score because he scores based on his feelings, but he gives the review based on like consensus opinions. So people are just like confused about it. Bukake Monogatari all over Aranagi's sisters. Landon, what's the meanest, not too mean thing I can say in response to that? Landon is a problem that takes care of himself with drinking.
I would have liked it even less then. I just had a big problem with harem tropes back in the day. And while it's still a sticking point that I have kept, I'm not as harsh on it as I once was. Like, I still don't want to watch Love Hina again, even though I can appreciate it for what it was and how it affected the medium. But it doesn't mean that I have to enjoy it, which is really a summary of my thoughts on Bakemonogatari as a whole. Bakemonogatari is a visually impressive series at times, and I can appreciate it for its rich characters and many of the themes and takes on the supernatural. But that's as far as I go. As for the rest, well, it's indeed a thing, I guess. And so, with all of that in mind, after meticulously considering my thoughts on the categories of story, characters, animation, sound, and my own personal enjoyment, after which, not inflicting the rating of possibly needless amounts of fans...
I love Landon.
...service, because I respect it more than that, has me awarding Bakemonogatari with the rating of...
All right, I want to know what you all think he's going to score Monogatari based on this review he just gave, where he said almost nothing. He said it's basically a show about nothing. There might be some depth to it, but I didn't notice. It's really perverted, and maybe that won't bother you, but it did bother me. Now, based on how it seems like he feels about this show, I would think like a 4. This is clearly not my kind of show. It made me uncomfortable. I didn't really get the jokes. I could see that it's probably good, but it's not my show. Now, let's see what you all think, because I'm obviously being unrealistic. So let's see. Your takes are 10, 7, 7, 10, no score, 7. He's going to say 8 because he's a dumbass and doesn't know what an 8 is. Sounds like he's going to get a 7, 7.5, light to decent 6. That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that his view of it is less than a 7 is kind of negative. So I'm thinking he goes 6. Like, being realistic. 4 is what he should give based on what he said. 10, 7, 66.6. I don't know if he does decimals. 7, unscorable. Ooh, that would be interesting if he takes that route. Damn, out of 10. 6 or 7. No world he doesn't give this a positive score, a minimum 7. Sewer icon. Bunny Girl out of 10. Bunny Girl was a 4 out of 10. Lamau. 5, 7... Nah, 7. Bunny Girl was it for the gifts and nothing else. This is so funny knowing what he gives it, lol, and how you're measuring it. Okay. Well, everybody else was saying between 6 and 10. 5, well, the lowest I saw from y'all was 5. I said 4 would be reasonable.
Okay, let's back up a second and talk about...
Uh-oh. We didn't even get an answer yet. Shit, we're backing up a second. Oh, I should have noticed there were 4 minutes left in the video.
Because people know that I have ratings that I like to give shows. There's skip it if I hate it and found it deplorable. Watch it or stream it if it's interesting enough to see, but not absolutely amazing. Buy it, because even if you can't own it physically, it has enough to it to be worth having it on your shelf, either physically or digitally. And finally, there's the rating of Certified Frosty, a rating for, and I quote, the best of the best, or those shows too important to ignore.
So he's got like a whole other rating scale of his own.
It's that last line, that last caveat to the Certified Frosty rating that has me a little bit conflicted with how I want to rate Bakemonogatari.
So he feels like he's supposed to give it Certified Frosty, but he doesn't want to.
Because I didn't necessarily enjoy the experience, but
Just
I
fucking
can see
say
where
it
others
sucks.
would, and
Just
that
say it fucking sucks. Just say I hated it and it sucked. It was uncomfortable. It was weird. I hated the writing. The characters are fucking dumb. I don't like it. Just say that, because that would be honest. And it's also true.
normally would have me giving it a stream it rating accordingly. But given the show's reputation, even though I would never have considered such a thing 10 years ago, it does qualify as an anime that one might say is
Stop.
too important to ignore. But for the
Nope.
microcosm that is this video, I don't think that the solution is an easy one, because it requires a bit more thought than I currently have time for in order to complete this video. Really what I need to do is just rejig the rating scheme to account for shows that are either slowly becoming classics or shows that are important to the anime lexicon, even if I don't particularly find them entertaining. So when I eventually do fix the rating system, maybe by just calling it a classic rating or something, then Bakemonogatari will fit under that. But for now, it's just getting a watch it rating, as it's hard to recommend given its content, but still neither irredeemable or not worth watching. Now, since the series is available from Aniplex, it has been a bit of a pain to own. Their box set for Bakemonogatari was one of their first in North America, and it's never dropped in price since then, really. So even while later entries of the Monogatari series are a bit more reasonably priced, for Aniplex, anyway, this first...
You're right, Caribou-kun, but at the same time, there's not a gradient with Fantano's. He says, like, the implication is it is a 10 out of 10. Like, he has said that, you know, I'm not giving it a 10 because it's meaningless to do so, because when he grades an album, he's grading it as, like, a consumer product. You know, classic album is like, well, now I've heard this for 10 years, and it's like, it's transcended the rating scale at that point, you know?
First entry is the outlier that makes it difficult to own. Thankfully, though, it is available for streaming over on Crunchyroll. But Aniplex never gave Crunchyroll the Blu-ray rips, so it's probably one of the worst ways to watch it. Not only is the quality capped at 480p, but as with so many other Shaft shows, there are plenty of changes made to the Blu-rays of the series that were not in the original
Hello,
broadcast. So owning and watching the Blu-rays would be preferable, but it is a significant financial commitment.
Oh,
as far as
Luna,
alternate anime
you have got to watch the anime we watched earlier.
recommendations, my answers are somewhat obvious. First, my teen romantic comedy
Good night, Aggie9.
Snafu is an example of a series that does similar things as Bakemonogatari, but is far more palpable for most people. I personally found it far more entertaining, but it doesn't have any of the supernatural elements that I actually enjoyed from Bake. Which leads me to my second recommendation of Rascal Dreams of Bunny Girl Senpai. That series took what I liked about Bakemonogatari and then just fixed a lot of the things that I didn't like. But I'll get into that a bit more tomorrow, because you voters decided that for this year's Review Week of Awesome, I should review them back to back. Oh boy. And lastly, I do want to give a very special thank you to my patrons who not only support my work in general, but who also allow me to do what I do. I love and appreciate you all.
He made you
Specifically,
so
though,
mad
as I
you
like to do, I
stopped
want to
drawing.
be particular.
I straight up tuned all that last part out. I couldn't. A person could say a certain number of words that don't mean anything before my brain won't listen to them anymore and like turns them into part of the music. And at some point, I forgot that was like a guy talking. I'm just listening to that that was in the background there, and like, holy moly, that was an experience. Don't watch the Monogatari series.
Not another bitch, just a shift in the flow. Not another bitch, just a shift in the flow. Let me hit the pitch, I'll ditch if it's a no. Let me hit the snitch, I'll sit him in the dough. Let me shit she don't know. Let me catch a fuck boy talking at his throat. I'll cut a fucker up if they forget who to go. I'll fuck a fucking mud doggy style on force. I'm pulling out the rug, unstuck and on tour. I'm pulling it in clutch, I'm sullenly sworn to be more than a woman like a Leah Reborn. What I see on the shore of Virginia Beach, what I see in the streets in the Norfolk sheets, what I free in my beast, what I see